Bungie has hit rock bottom. The sentiment towards Bungie as a gaming studio has never been lower in the history of this company, over 30 years making games. Now for 10 years, they've been making Destiny 1 and Destiny 2, and of course they've received a ton of criticism. Of course there's been some terrible times. We could go back to the dark ages and talk about Destiny 2 year one, but there has never been a time when the sentiment of the company itself has been this low, and it has been spiraling out of control for quite some time now. And I want to go and discuss some of these key details that I think are important to why Bungie has been absolutely flamed, roasted. Everywhere I go on social media, no one wants to support Bungie, it seems like. It's getting to a point where things are really, really dark, and I cannot help but feel like this is Bungie's rock bottom moment. If there is ever a time when Bungie is going to have to really sit down and rethink what their identity is as a company, what their goals are, it's now. Like now they are sitting and rethinking, what are we gonna do to dig ourselves out of this one? It really started, in my opinion, it started well before this, but the Lightfall narrative falling short and the sentiment towards Lightfall was really the beginning of this downward spiral. And let me know if you agree or disagree with a lot of it, because of course there's been points in time where we've criticized Bungie, and we try to keep it fair on the channel here. We're not trying to roast them in a way that's unfair. We're trying to roast just the stuff that they do when it comes to their choices as a game developer, and are they good or not. The Lightfall narrative was terrible, and obviously shipping Lightfall in the way they did kind of hurt the player sentiment quite a bit. And we obviously have seen this later on, and we'll get to this in a moment, where the Lightfall actually sold better than the final shape, and that makes no sense, right? It shouldn't have been that way. Obviously the final shape is critically acclaimed. It doesn't make any sense how Lightfall would outsell that, but we saw the Lightfall narrative fall really short, and that was kind of the beginning of dark times. Of course, we've seen a really dark spiral begin from that. We also saw the layoffs come from that, and that was round one, when we saw so many people getting laid off initially, and it was like 100 plus, and we thought, this is insane, I can't believe this is happening. But unfortunately those layoffs happened, and we know later on that there was a second round of layoffs that was even worse. But on top of that, we also got the final shape delay, which is obviously a big problem, more so than I think you realize, because even though the final shape getting delayed means that they're able to put more time and money and effort into it, it also means that it's just more expensive, so it needs to sell significantly better. Now obviously the final shape being delayed is probably part of the reason why it is so critically acclaimed and why it's done so well. So many people rated it 5 out of 5, 10 out of 10, myself included. I rated the final shape's arrival 10 out of 10. And it was delayed, and that probably did help that, but it also made it much more expensive, which is obviously part of the issue for Bungie as well. On top of that, we had, like we mentioned, final shape was sold less than Lightfall, and with the delay, that means that's a huge loss to revenue, a huge loss to those projections. And we also had then round two of the Bungie layoffs, and that situation was just terrible. I mean, that was probably, it was spiraling downwards, but once we had round two of the layoffs, all hell broke loose at that point in time. We have since then, it's been basically every other day, we have seen a newer, crazier story than the day before about some horror stories within Bungie, some terrible work culture that's going on there as well. It just gets worse and worse. Along with the round two of layoffs, we had that terrible layoff where someone was literally about to go on their maternity leave and they got laid off by Bungie. I think that one went kind of under the radar for a lot of people, but some people definitely remember that. And it's a pretty dark layoff situation, right? You don't want laying someone off like the day before the maternity leave is like pretty douchey. But moving on to the next part, we also have Pete Parsons getting a ton of criticism where everyone else is getting laid off. Even Pete Parsons is supposedly getting a pay cut, even though I don't think we really know the details of that. It's then revealed that he has this like crazy exotic car collection, millions of dollars in cars. It seems like he's really living this really lavish luxury lifestyle. Meanwhile, a lot of people are getting laid off, and Destiny 2 as a whole is experiencing some serious downturn. And I like to use that term downturn because I think that a lot of time people like to talk about Destiny 2 as dying or dead, and I feel like we've gone through this cycle enough times now for 10 years that it's a little bit dishonest or not a fair representation of what Destiny 2 is going through when we say that it's dying or that it's a dead game, because clearly this game, if it was ever dead, it has the self-res capabilities, right? We came back from Destiny 2 year one, so if Destiny 2 is ever dying, it has the ability for a self-res. But will Bungie be able to pull off the self-res again like they did with Forsaken? Was the final shape the self-res button, or was the final shape the beginning of the end? We're going to jump into some of this in a minute here, because after the Pete Parsons car stuff, we got even more crazier news. We got some of that Bungie There's a Bungie director who is a big creep, and he's been released from Marathon. He's doing all these creepy things to different women at the studio. Some people were trying to support them in that. It's just really weird culture that's going on there. We also had Luke Smith getting laid off. We also had Mark Noseworthy getting laid off. And then on top of that, we had this crazy Halloween story of even more creepy culture stuff going on at Bungie. It's like, it just doesn't stop for the craziness that's going on every week. On top of that, we also have the Final Shape's population now is dropping pretty drastically. Like I said, it was critically acclaimed. It was received really, really well, but it's aging like milk and the population is dropping really, really low. The Sony CEO themselves actually said to Bungie and humiliated them in front of everyone, in front of their Sony conference. They said that they wish Bungie would take accountability for their actions, accountability for their failures and their shortcomings. And they clearly haven't. They've just been laying more and more people off. So now Sony is actually taking control of this company, as we can see the shift in culture happening right now, where Sony's going to be calling the shots, it would seem. We'll see what happens if Pete Parsons is still around after all of this, all of the dust settles. On top of that, we have the Trials population, like we mentioned, has got its absolute lowest point in Destiny 2 Trials of Osiris. Now keep that in mind that there was Destiny 1 Trials of Osiris, and then when Destiny 2 launched, there was Trials of the Nine, and then they discontinued that, and then there was Trials of Osiris. They discontinued Trials of the Nine because the population hit about 50,000 players. We're now at 75,000 players, and there's 5 more weeks of Trials left. 5 more weeks. You already know that's probably going to get below 75k if it's there right now. How low will it go? Will we see lower numbers in Trials of Osiris in Destiny 2 after critically acclaimed the Final Shape expansion releases? Lower than Destiny 2 Year 1? Will we really see population numbers that low? That would be astonishing. That would be crazy to me. The future right now in Destiny 2, because of all of these issues and everything that's going on, the company's integrity, the game's population dwindling, is very uncertain. All we've heard is that Frontiers is happening. And in a game like Destiny 2, where it's a looter shooter, and you have all the armor and weapons that you've collected in your vault, you want to know that the time you invest in this game matters, that the loot you've acquired is going to continue in perpetuity forever and ever for many, many years to come. And Bungie has talked about for the plans for years to come in previous twids. And so we do know that there are plans, at least loose plans, but they haven't made anything solid. We really want to know, what is the next 3 years going to look like with the new episodic model? We want to know where are we going, what's the future hold, because right now we're going through a really turbulent time right now. This is easily rock bottom for Bungie as a company and their community perception amongst everyone. Seeing all the criticism on Twitter is pretty wild to me. People that have supported Bungie for a very long period of time completely leaving them behind, leaving Destiny 2 behind. Leaving Destiny 2 behind, not because they don't even enjoy Destiny 2, but just because they don't want to support the company. Now that is a crazy situation. And that brings me back to the final point here, which is that we've been looking for the Destiny killer for so many years, and I cannot help but feel like, after everything that has happened, truly the game that killed Destiny is not any other game other than Bungie themselves. The management of Destiny 2 has been so poor, and it has led to where we're at right now, which is not the death of Destiny. We're not quite there yet, but the pulse of Destiny is as low as it's ever been. And I know a lot of people love to criticize when we talk about topics like this, because they say, hey, it's like this all the time. Every time we get to a new season, when we're at the end point, everyone screams, oh, the population's so low. All the YouTubers do this, all the content creators do this. It's not like that. Literally, the graphs will give you a projection of where the population should be right now. We are well below where the projection should be based on all previous expansions, based on all previous timelines. We have a lot of data. We have 10 years of data. The data is telling us that we are significantly lower than where we should be in terms of population. It's not about saying, hey, the population is lower than the launch, so the game is dying. That is silly. That is absurd. We're not here to say that. We're not here to say the game is dying, but the pulse of Destiny 2 is very, very weak, and it's not looking good, especially by the fact that we have 5 weeks left. And I'm wondering what Trials is going to feel like for these 5 weeks. I'm wondering what Destiny 2 is going to feel like over the next 5 weeks, especially as we're seeing all these exposés coming out every other day from Bungie. But as someone that's played this game for 20,000+ hours, I do not want the game to die. I really hope that Bungie doubles down on their efforts to improve Destiny 2. I think that it's worth it. I think it's much more worth it safer bet than putting all that money into Marathon, but let me know what you think down in the comments below. And make sure to subscribe if you enjoyed, and smash the like button. I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching. Later.